The rain fell gently onto the pavement, creating shimmering pools beneath the dim glow of street lamps. It was early November, and the bitter chill had begun to seep into the bones of anyone unlucky enough to be outdoors. Jake pulled his threadbare hoodie tighter around himself, shivering as he glanced nervously at the entrance of the upscale Italian restaurant across the street. Hunger clawed at his empty stomach, his pride long swallowed by survival. He needed help. He just had to find the courage to ask. Taking a shaky breath, Jake crossed the street, his sneakers squelching in the rain. His heart pounded, shame and anxiety fighting for dominance within him. The door of the restaurant swung open, and a group of elegantly dressed people spilled out into the night, laughing warmly. Their joy was alien to him. Jake hesitated, his pulse racing as he watched them walk away. He couldn't do it. Not now. But just as he was about to retreat to his spot under the awning of a nearby bookstore, another man emerged alone, dressed immaculately in a dark suit and long wool coat. He carried himself with calm assurance, checking his phone briefly before slipping it back into his pocket. Jake felt his knees weaken. This was his chance. "Excuse me, sir," Jake whispered, his voice barely audible against the steady drumming of rain. Clearing his throat, he tried again, louder this time. "Sir, do you have any spare change?" The man halted, turning his head slowly toward Jake. His gaze was gentle but penetrating, taking in Jake's worn clothes, pale face, and trembling hands. Jake felt a rush of embarrassment burn his cheeks, but he held the stranger's eyes, forcing himself not to look away. "What's your name?" the man asked quietly, surprising Jake with the unexpected kindness in his voice. "Jake," he replied softly, gripping the damp edges of his hoodie. "Jake Miller." The man nodded thoughtfully, then reached into the pocket of his coat. Jake's heart skipped a beat, anticipation briefly surging through his tired body. But when the stranger's hand reappeared, it wasn't coins or crumpled bills he offered. It was a simple gesture, a warm, outstretched palm. "I'm Benjamin," the man said gently, stepping closer under the street lamp. "Listen, Jake, when's the last time you ate?" Jake stared, dumbfounded. No one ever asked him that. People sometimes tossed coins or walked away hurriedly, their eyes avoiding his as if poverty were contagious. But Benjamin's expression was different, free of judgment and full of genuine curiosity. "A couple of days ago," Jake admitted, eyes dropping to his soaked sneakers, humiliation flaring within him again. Benjamin paused thoughtfully, taking a slow breath as he scanned the rainy street. His eyes returned to Jake, filled with quiet resolve. "How about we fix that right now?" Jake's eyes widened, suspicion warring with desperate hope. "Why?" he whispered. "You don't even know me." Benjamin smiled softly, the corners of his eyes crinkling with kindness. "Because no one deserves to go hungry, Jake." Without another word, Benjamin turned slightly, gesturing toward a small cafe a block away. Jake hesitated briefly, overwhelmed by uncertainty. Yet something about Benjamin's gentle persistence told him to trust this stranger, unaware that the man he was about to follow was one of the richest men in the country. The cafe was warm, with dim lights and the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee and pastries. Jake's heart raced nervously as he followed Benjamin inside, feeling painfully out of place among cozy tables and soft chatter. A friendly waitress greeted Benjamin warmly, then glanced curiously at Jake, offering him a hesitant but kind smile. "Take any seat you like." Benjamin gestured gently, his voice calm and reassuring. Jake chose the table farthest from the entrance, hidden slightly in shadow, as if trying to make himself invisible. Benjamin eased into the chair across from him, slipping off his coat and folding it carefully onto the empty chair beside him. The waitress approached quickly, notebook in hand. "What can I get you both?" she asked pleasantly. "Hot chocolate?" Benjamin suggested softly, sensing Jake's hesitation. Jake nodded gratefully, eyes fixed on his trembling fingers resting atop the table. Benjamin ordered 2 hot chocolates and a selection of sandwiches and pastries. The waitress scribbled quickly, offered another warm smile, and disappeared behind the counter. An awkward silence hung briefly between them. Jake shifted uncomfortably, uncertain how to speak, his voice trapped behind anxiety. Benjamin studied him gently, his expression compassionate yet careful. "You don't have to be nervous around me." Benjamin broke the silence softly. "I promise. I just want to help." Jake finally raised his eyes, cautiously meeting Benjamin's sincere gaze. "Why me?" Jake asked quietly, his voice cracked with emotion. "There's hundreds out there, worse off than me. Why bother?" Benjamin paused thoughtfully, then leaned forward slightly. "Because I saw myself in you tonight. It reminded me of a younger version of me, someone desperately hoping someone would notice. And you asked, Jake. You reached out, even though it was painful." Jake swallowed hard, emotions threatening to overflow. His defenses started to weaken as Benjamin's words penetrated deep into layers of hurt he'd carefully constructed. Before he could respond, the waitress returned, gently placing 2 steaming cups of hot chocolate and plates filled with sandwiches onto the table. "Enjoy, gentlemen," she whispered warmly, stepping away quietly. Jake wrapped his cold hands around the warm mug, the heat instantly thawing his frozen fingers. Tears blurred his vision, and embarrassment surged within him. He blinked them away hastily, hoping Benjamin wouldn't notice. But Benjamin had seen. "It's okay," Benjamin reassured softly. "We've all been there, feeling invisible, forgotten." Jake took a cautious sip, the warmth spreading comfortingly through his chilled body. Courage built slowly within him, and without fully understanding why, he started speaking. Words poured out quietly, hesitantly at first, then steadily stronger. He shared memories he'd kept hidden for years, losing his mother at 8, moving through foster homes, suffering abuse and neglect, and eventually choosing the brutal freedom of street life. Benjamin listened patiently, his expression shifting between sorrow and quiet admiration for the boy's resilience. As Jake finished speaking, exhausted by vulnerability, Benjamin's gaze softened even more. "You've been incredibly strong, Jake," Benjamin finally said, sincerity deepening his voice. "But you don't have to do this alone anymore." Jake stared at him, startled by the gentle determination in Benjamin's eyes. He felt something stirred deep inside him, something he had long forgotten: hope. After leaving the cafe, Benjamin stood quietly under the awning, watching Jake finish the last bite of the pastry he had insisted Jake take with him. The night had grown darker, the rain heavier, but Jake barely noticed, still savoring the lingering sweetness that soothed more than just his hunger. "Where will you stay tonight, Jake?" Benjamin's voice was calm, gentle, carrying an undercurrent of concern. Jake's expression shifted instantly from contentment back to harsh reality. His eyes lowered, his shoulders slumping. "There's a spot in an alley off 5th Avenue," he murmured quietly, embarrassment tinting his cheeks again. "It's dry enough." Benjamin remained silent, thoughtful, then shook his head slowly. "Not tonight. Come with me." Jake's pulse quickened, suspicion returning instantly. "Where?" he asked warily, his voice tight with distrust built through painful experiences. Benjamin raised his hands reassuringly, sensing the boy's tension. "There's a small hotel nearby, warm room, clean bed, just for tonight. No strings attached." Jake hesitated, eyes narrowing slightly. Trusting strangers was dangerous. But something in Benjamin's expression, something earnest and unguarded, kept pushing Jake to reconsider. A gust of cold wind swept down the street, chilling him to the bone and deciding for him. He nodded reluctantly. They walked quietly down the street, Benjamin leading the way. A small boutique hotel appeared ahead, its lights warm and inviting. Benjamin stepped inside first, greeted warmly by a woman behind the reception desk who seemed familiar with him. He spoke quietly, paying discreetly for the room, then handed Jake a key card with a reassuring nod. "I'll see you in the morning," Benjamin said softly, offering Jake a gentle, encouraging smile before stepping out of the lobby and disappearing into the night. Jake stood for a moment, keycard trembling slightly in his hand. The receptionist smiled warmly, guiding him toward the elevator. As the doors closed, Jake felt strangely vulnerable, yet safe, a mix of relief and confusion swirling inside him. In the quiet warmth of the room, Jake sat carefully on the edge of the soft bed, almost afraid it would disappear. He glanced around, noting the small gestures of care: a fresh towel, toiletries, a soft robe hanging neatly in the wardrobe. Jake had forgotten the simple comfort of these basic kindnesses. Exhaustion finally overtook suspicion, and he lay back, sinking into the softness of the mattress. Across town, Benjamin entered his penthouse apartment overlooking the city. He stood by the large window, gazing thoughtfully at the distant lights, heart heavy. Jake's face, his wary yet hopeful eyes, reminded Benjamin painfully of his own past. Despite being wealthy now, he too once knew loneliness intimately. He remembered the cold halls of boarding schools, the emotional distance from guardians, and the profound ache of losing his parents too young. Benjamin's phone buzzed softly, interrupting his reflection. It was Sarah, his assistant, texting about tomorrow's early board meeting. Benjamin replied briefly, but his thoughts remained elsewhere, focused entirely on Jake. He knew offering shelter and food wasn't enough. Real help required something deeper, something far beyond charity. He resolved then, quietly but firmly, to truly make a difference in Jake's life. Carefully, gently, respectfully. He knew the journey wouldn't be easy, yet a sense of determination filled him, giving him a renewed sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. Early the next morning, Benjamin sat quietly at his desk, a half-empty coffee mug beside him, gazing thoughtfully out at the waking city. Sunlight trickled through tall glass windows, illuminating the elegant furnishings of his expansive office. But his thoughts weren't on business. They lingered instead on Jake and the intense vulnerability he'd witnessed the night before. A gentle knock sounded on the office door, pulling Benjamin from his reflections. "Come in," he said softly. The door opened, and Sarah stepped inside, her expression a careful blend of curiosity and professionalism. She held a tablet tightly, clearly sensing something different in Benjamin's demeanor. "You asked to see me early today?" Sarah said quietly, approaching cautiously. Benjamin nodded, motioning her to sit. "I want to talk about Jake." She settled into the chair opposite him, attentive and patient. "The boy you mentioned last night? The one you took to the hotel?" Benjamin exhaled slowly, nodding. "There's something different about him, Sarah. He's not just a charity case, he's a survivor. He's strong, resilient, but deeply hurt. I don't want to just throw money at him. That wouldn't fix anything. He needs real support, genuine connection." Sarah considered Benjamin's words carefully, her gaze steady. "What do you have in mind?" Benjamin paused thoughtfully, eyes drifting back toward the city skyline. "I want to offer Jake more than financial help. I want him to feel safe enough to rebuild trust. Mentorship, maybe guidance, something real." Sarah hesitated, then gently offered her insight. "You understand he might push back, right? People who've lived rough don't easily trust kindness, especially kindness they think has conditions." Benjamin nodded, thoughtful silence hanging briefly between them. "You're right, but he's worth trying for. I've been where he is, emotionally at least. Wealth doesn't erase those memories or feelings of abandonment. The difference is, I had resources to cope. Jake doesn't." Sarah studied Benjamin closely, moved by the raw sincerity in his voice. "What if he finds out who you really are before you're ready to tell him?" Benjamin's brow furrowed slightly, revealing his quiet inner conflict. "Then he'll likely think I'm just another rich man easing his conscience. That's my fear, losing the genuine connection we're building. It needs careful timing." Sarah nodded slowly, recognizing Benjamin's genuine dilemma. "Then perhaps you should reveal yourself sooner rather than later. Trust works both ways." Benjamin sighed deeply, the weight of the situation heavy in his chest. "I'll think about it. In the meantime, could you quietly make sure Jake is taken care of? Food, clothes, basics, but anonymously. No extravagance, just dignity." "Of course," Sarah replied softly, rising to leave. "And Benjamin?" He looked up, eyes thoughtful. "Yes? It's good what you're doing. Real compassion is rare in your world. Jake's lucky he found you." Benjamin offered a faint smile, acknowledging her words quietly as Sarah left the room, gently closing the door behind her. Alone again, Benjamin leaned back, closing his eyes briefly. Sarah's words lingered in his mind, stirring something deep inside. Helping Jake wasn't charity or obligation. It felt necessary, vital even. Benjamin knew he stood on the edge of something deeply meaningful, not only for Jake, but also for himself. Later that afternoon, Jake stepped out of the hotel, refreshed but cautious, glancing warily at the busy street. His stomach was comfortably full, a rare sensation that made him uneasy. He couldn't shake the feeling that all this kindness was temporary, fragile, like a dream that could vanish at any moment. As he walked aimlessly through the bustling city sidewalks, Jake's eyes drifted toward a newsstand displaying a row of glossy magazines and newspapers. A familiar face caught his attention, stopping him in his tracks. He moved closer, eyes wide in disbelief. Benjamin's photograph covered the front page of a business magazine under bold, imposing letters. Benjamin Carter, America's youngest self-made billionaire. Jake's heart pounded violently in his chest, his ears ringing. Billionaire. The word felt impossibly heavy, surreal. He grabbed the magazine impulsively, hands shaking as he flipped through the pages. There was Benjamin again, smiling confidently, impeccably dressed, surrounded by luxury that Jake could barely comprehend. A wave of betrayal surged inside him, bitter and sharp. Everything suddenly felt fake. The kindness, the warmth, the words Benjamin had said. Had he been just a charity project for a bored billionaire? Anger burned fiercely, fueled by shame and disappointment. He dropped the magazine back onto the stand, ignoring the vendor's irritated glare, and backed away quickly, panic rising within him. The city streets suddenly felt colder, harsher, cruelly indifferent again. Jake hurried blindly through the crowded sidewalks, tears stinging his eyes, his vision blurred by anger and confusion. Why had Benjamin pretended to understand him, to care about him, when clearly he couldn't possibly understand a life like Jake's? He turned sharply into a narrow alley, leaning against the damp brick wall, breathing heavily. His mind raced, flooded with memories of the past few hours. The warm cafe, Benjamin's gentle encouragement, the clean hotel room. All of it felt tainted now, mocking him. Jake felt foolish for believing he could trust anyone, especially someone wealthy enough to view him as merely another charity case. Jake sank down, wrapping his arms around his knees, feeling smaller than ever. Hot tears rolled silently down his cheeks, each drop filled with bitterness and resentment toward himself as much as Benjamin. Trusting had been his mistake. Kindness, clearly, was just another lie. Back at his office, Benjamin sat unaware of Jake's discovery, finishing a long call with one of his business partners. As he ended the call, his phone buzzed urgently. It was Sarah, her voice anxious as she spoke. "Benjamin, Jake checked out of the hotel this afternoon. No one's seen him since. Something might be wrong. Benjamin's stomach twisted sharply, fear gripping him instantly. His instincts told him Jake had found out who he was, shattering the delicate trust he'd carefully tried to build. He stood abruptly, grabbing his coat. "I'll find him myself," he said firmly. His voice was steady, but his heart raced with anxiety. Benjamin knew Jake would feel betrayed and hurt, but he couldn't let him vanish again. Not like this, not alone. Stepping into the elevator, Benjamin felt a rush of urgency. He needed to find Jake, not as a billionaire looking to soothe his conscience, but as someone who genuinely cared, who refused to abandon Jake to the harsh realities of a world that had already hurt him too much. The sun dipped low behind tall buildings, casting long shadows across the city streets. Benjamin walked swiftly, eyes scanning alleys, street corners, and the huddled figures beneath cardboard shelters. The glossy comforts of his penthouse now seemed distant, almost meaningless, as his heart twisted with genuine worry. He'd spent hours combing through Jake's usual spots without luck, anxiety mounting with each passing moment. Darkness settled quickly, and the city shifted into a harsher nighttime rhythm. Benjamin felt out of place, drawing occasional curious glances as he moved deeper into neighborhoods he rarely visited. He ignored his discomfort, determined only to find Jake, his thoughts focused solely on the boy he had unintentionally hurt. As Benjamin turned into a narrow alley near Fifth Avenue, a faint silhouette caught his attention, a thin figure curled up against a brick wall, barely visible in the dim streetlight. His heart skipped painfully as he recognized Jake's familiar hoodie and posture of quiet despair. "Jake," Benjamin called softly, approaching carefully, not wanting to startle him. Jake stiffened, lifting his head abruptly. He wiped roughly at his eyes, trying unsuccessfully to hide tears of frustration and humiliation. "What do you want?" Jake's voice trembled slightly, hardened by anger and exhaustion. "Come to throw more pity at me? To feel good about yourself again?" Benjamin stopped a few feet away, hands raised gently to show he meant no harm. "I came because I care, Jake, and because you matter, whether you believe that or not." Jake laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "Right, billionaires like you don't care. I'm just another homeless kid to you, another charity case you can write off and forget." "No," Benjamin said quietly but firmly, taking a cautious step closer. "That's not true. I know why you feel betrayed. I understand why you're angry. But I wasn't lying to you. Everything I did was because I saw myself in you. Because you deserve kindness. Real kindness." Jake looked up, eyes shining with raw hurt. "How can you possibly understand? You have everything. You'll never know what it's like to feel invisible, unwanted." Benjamin hesitated briefly, then slowly sat beside Jake on the cold, damp pavement. The act surprised Jake, momentarily silencing him. "You're wrong," Benjamin began softly, his voice heavy with sincerity. "I wasn't born rich. I lost my parents when I was very young. Money couldn't fill that emptiness, Jake. I grew up feeling just like you do now, invisible, alone, abandoned. Wealth didn't erase any of that." Jake glanced sideways, his anger softening slightly as Benjamin spoke. "But you have everything now," he murmured weakly. "Why would you even notice someone like me?" "Because I recognize pain," Benjamin answered simply. "Money can't fix loneliness or heal wounds of the past, not entirely, but kindness can, connection can. That's why I'm here." Jake's shoulders slowly relaxed, his breathing calming. Benjamin's words settled gently, quietly, breaking down walls built over years of mistrust and rejection. He turned hesitantly toward Benjamin, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "What happens now?" Jake asked softly, vulnerability breaking through. Benjamin smiled gently, reassuringly. You decide. But if you let me, I'd like to help, not just with money, Jake, but by being someone you can trust." Jake stared thoughtfully at the pavement, his heart weighing Benjamin's sincerity carefully. After a long, silent moment, he finally nodded, allowing himself, perhaps for the first time, to believe that kindness didn't always come with strings attached. In the months following that emotional night, Jake's life began slowly to reshape itself. Benjamin kept his promise, not showering Jake with extravagant gifts, but quietly and patiently offering guidance, support, and steady encouragement. He helped Jake enroll back into school, providing the teenager a sense of dignity he'd nearly forgotten. Slowly, trust blossomed between them, rooted not in Benjamin's wealth, but in their shared understanding of vulnerability and resilience. Jake thrived in the structure and security of his new routine, steadily gaining confidence in himself. He started working part-time at a local bookstore, earning his own money, a simple act that filled him with a profound sense of pride and independence. Every week, Benjamin met Jake after his shift, and they would walk together through the city, sharing stories, laughter, and wisdom born from their own experiences. Their friendship grew deeper with every step they took together. One evening, exactly 1 year after their first encounter, Benjamin met Jake outside the bookstore, carrying a small wrapped package. The cool evening air hinted at approaching winter, but Jake now wore a warm coat and sturdy shoes, items he had purchased himself through diligent saving. Benjamin's eyes softened warmly at Jake's proud, confident stance as he approached. "Hey, Benjamin," Jake greeted him, smiling brightly. Benjamin grinned warmly, holding out the wrapped gift. "Here, just a small something to mark 1 year since we met." Jake carefully unwrapped the package, revealing a worn leather journal, simple but beautiful in its age and dignity. Jake ran his fingers slowly over the cover, emotions swirling gently within him. "It's beautiful," he whispered quietly, genuinely touched. "Thank you." Benjamin placed a gentle hand on Jake's shoulder. "I thought you might want to write your own story now. Fill those pages with everything you've learned, everything you dream. Your voice matters, Jake." Jake nodded thoughtfully, holding the journal close. "I will," he promised earnestly. The two walked slowly along the familiar streets, eventually reaching the same cafe where Benjamin had first bought Jake that comforting hot chocolate on that rainy night. Sitting quietly by the window, they reminisced gently, acknowledging how much they'd both changed through knowing each other. Suddenly, Jake's gaze caught something outside the cafe window. A thin, frightened teenager sitting alone in the cold, shivering, eyes downcast, as passers-by ignored his whispered pleas for help. Jake watched intently, memories flooding painfully back. He turned decisively to Benjamin, his voice firm with newfound purpose. "It's my turn now, Benjamin. I can't just walk past." Benjamin smiled knowingly, pride evident in his expression. "Go," he urged softly. Jake stepped outside, walking calmly toward the nervous teen. He crouched gently beside the boy, offering a reassuring smile as he spoke quietly. Words shaped by compassion and understanding born from experience. Watching through the cafe window, Benjamin felt profound warmth spread through him. Witnessing kindness and compassion passed forward, exactly as he'd hoped. Now, dear reader, it's your turn. Jake's journey reminds us all that real change begins not with billions in our pockets, but kindness in our hearts. Look around your own world carefully. Who might you overlook today? Who needs the compassion that only you can offer? This very moment, you hold the power to rewrite someone else's story. Don't wait for someone else to step in. Be the Benjamin in someone else's Jake story today.